Hey everyone, good to see y'all. How we doing? Hey, what up? Unmute yourself. Put in the chat. How you doing? And he's going all out. Some workout session, seems. Viviana is like a fairy in the meadow. Grounded, okay. Maybe not a fairy then, like a hobbit. Well, I guess fairies are grounded, but I don't know. Never know.
Can also be grounded.
Yeah, true that. Oh, nice. All right, well, it's good to see y'all. I know we have been going on a kind of not necessarily a new flow, but we've been talking about a few kind of core concepts over the past few weeks in regards to, self-honesty, responsibility, and what we have deemed relentless compassion, which seems like an oxymoron on some level, but it's kind of like how in some of the leveled courses that we were doing previously, where we were talking a lot about discipline and compassion being very similar, if not the same thing. And this is kind of how I view the idea of relentless compassion, where if we were to imagine, we exist in these bodies that have been ridden with trauma and different distortions and manipulation and abuse over many, 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 lifetimes, but even just this lifetime, it's like there's a natural robotic response of self-judgment and condemnation and self-doubt and lack of self-trust and self-love and like all these things that we can essentially ignite within ourselves are, for many here may have done a lot of work on this, but at the core of the matter of maybe where a lot of us have started or came from was much of these things were reversed. So the default response is to be in self-doubt, or the default response is to be, guilting or shaming oneself, or, in constant judgment, criticism, comparison to everything and everyone. And so the dynamic of coming to accept that reality and come to acknowledge the reality that is very much the default response for these bodies and the robotic mechanism of what this body is, especially when we're taking trauma into consideration. So relentless compassion is so much of a usefulness in that sense, because we're constantly having to remind this body and the dynamics of the self that have been wounded or distorted or fragmented or separate or whatever, to that it's okay, essentially, that it's okay, and that we actually are eternal and we are of a loving nature, and we are, our birthright is to exist within a space of peace and equanimity and balance and well-being and abundance and power and clarity and all these various things. So the relentless compassion is so much necessary, because the amnesia, the fog, and the sleepiness of forgetting this fact is so strong, and it never really gives up, to be honest. Like, even in the Kelowna community, we hear of great beings that many in the New Age community view to be very ascended masters or this or that, but still having issues or still having experienced fallen realities or fallen circumstances from a lack of humility or a letting up of that relentlessness, of that compassion, like ongoing, where it does not give up. There is no breaks, even when you are taking a break, even when you're resting, in the forest or on the beach or wherever you are, resting in yourself and experiencing the deep surrender that is. But there's still really, we're never really letting up on that compassion, because it constantly has to be there. Because the moment that we let up on that, then naturally this is where those patterns can start to creep back in. So this is that self-honesty and that responsibility, where it's all of the virtues, we're not going to get into all the virtues today, but we have touched on a lot of them. And then I'm going to do a separate workshop on just the virtues from the Kelowna tradition, because, there's a lot we can reflect on each of them. But when we look at self-honesty and responsibility and just simply awareness, because they're very synonymous. Being aware, it's hard not to be honest. Being aware, it's hard not to be authentic and vulnerable, being aware it's hard not to be responsible, because how can you avoid, it's right there in front of you. So so they're all kind of synonymous, but there is a certain quality to each of those terms that can be reflected on in a very specific manner. And so after the meditation today, and maybe even within the meditation, we'll contemplate on some of the more so journaling processes that I've used in regards to what I like to call like auditing behavior, but specifically just bringing to light the dynamics of how you're expressing yourself over a period or a course of time, and how you're able to bring a light of awareness to the progress that you're making in regards to these things. Because, a lot of people get on the spiritual path and they kind of, there's a lot of going with the flow, and I don't want to set goals anymore. And, we become very, like, we move very much into the right brain and the more feminine qualities because we're healing that aspect. But having a more scientific approach to your process, a methodical, a disciplined, a patterned approach to your process is actually very helpful. And it will keep you in check when you start to kind of veer into more of that overall going with the flow and all that kind of thing, which can be great for periods, but it's wonderful when they're meshed together, actually, right? Where we reintegrate basic logic and practicality, and specifically a scientific approach to our process, essentially, right? So yeah, that's what we'll open up today. I want to just get into oh, Annie's saying, am I the only one who's losing connection? Is anyone else losing connection? Just let me know in the chat or wherever. We should be good. Okay, so yeah, so I want to guide into a kind of a meditation, but it's more of a contemplative process. But the connection is solid, and the message of compassion is very, very timely. Yes, nice. Yeah, it is. I mean, I just had a one-on-one session with someone this morning, actually, and there was a lot of just this dynamic of finding the balance between a viewpoint of progress and direction and attainment, right? Because when we go on our path, there are certain kind of stages or initiations we go through where we move through a bit of a threshold, and that threshold kind of reveals a certain new attainment that we're coming into on our path. And that is because we are literally moving through layers of ourselves, which denote specific stages of the process of awakening. These are very, they've all been outlined in different traditions in different ways, and there's a legitimate reality to that. And also, there's a legitimate reality to the fact that you're perfect as you are, and everything that you would ever need is already available to you to make that progress, right? So you see, we're meshing the two of these things, because if we're only on the side of saying, well, I'm perfect as I am, I'm perfect as I am, I'm perfect as I am, it's almost like you're telling yourself that to convince yourself of that, even though some of your behaviors or ways of being are not in alignment with that viewpoint of a impeccable way of being. So if we're only on that side, then we're not integral or authentic to ourselves, because we know that there is an unfolding of progress, an unfolding of time that is happening, and that we are engaging in actively. Then on the other side, if we're only about progress and focus, then we lose sight of the very fact that the lessons we're looking for are not in this next book, this next workshop, this next teaching, the next like addictive pattern that we think we're going to get from the outside. It's actually already available here, right? Like, say the emotion we're avoiding, or some person on our mind that we need to address something with, or, it's like right there. So riding the wave of both of these things is something really reflective. And this would be essentially, and we'll go into the process of meditation to reflect on these two sides, but this would be something that I would encourage afterwards as a journaling process, to identify within yourself how you are engaging your relationship with a focus endeavor on your process of things you're actively engaging within your shadow, within the aspects of distortions or things you're noticing about your behavior that you feel are not in alignment, and you're working and bringing into awareness how that can further align itself. So this is one side. And then on the other side, how can you recognize that the gold you're looking for in the progress of those things actually exists right where you are already. It's already in the topics and emotions and feelings and sensations that are actively being engaged right here, right now, and ever presently they're revealing themselves. It's when we distance ourselves in either end that we think that we start to create more issues, and we actually start to run. It's like chasing a tail, right? We think we need to like make all this progress by doing all these more things, when in reality, it's actually right here. Like, you just look in your body and you can feel that stuck emotion that you just have been avoiding, and you did like 3 workshops to try and figure out. You know what I mean? But really, it's actually right. It's like sitting right there, like right in your gut. And that's like 3 months later, it's still there. And you're like, oh shit, wait a minute. Like, all these YouTube videos, it didn't actually change a damn thing, right? And it can. It's not to say it doesn't, but I'm just, you get my point, right? Just like, I don't know, relationships with our family sometimes is that people reject their family in the initial spaces of the spiritual quest because they're not ready to deal with their family. And then as they go through their healing, you come back to your family because they're like, oh wait, so much of the work, the true work, actually resides within these very close relationships, right? So yeah, so it's a kind of riding of the two. So we'll let's engage this in a meditative, contemplative way, and we'll see where it takes us. So we can get comfortable. And if you'd like to close your eyes, you can. And we're going to ride the wave of that topic right as it has already come. And that is what is already presently available here. That is essentially what I'm looking for in regards to the guidance, in regards to the direction, or in regards to something simply to be acknowledged and discovered about your unfolding process and what you may view to be spiritual progress or healing or transformation, or these various terms. So you may find this actually reveals something so simple. There may be the most subtle layers of discomfort or just tension, maybe in the physical body. So you can kind of run a current or wave of that loving compassion down from the top of the head, down through the eyes, through the back of the head, and the neck, and the jaw, down through the shoulders, down through the spine, through the torso, through the arms. All the way down through the hips and the pelvic region to the legs. All the way down through the shins, the ankles, feet, down into the earth, and feeling that wave of compassion that's kind of run through there. But this may not necessarily take care of everything. You may have some particular thought forms that are quite charged too. So there can be a running of that compassion and a wave through the regions of consciousness where you feel those thoughts are being held. Because although sometimes often they're held in the head, you may also locate them in different regions, particular thought forms. And we can use the breath, just a very gentle breath in through the nose, not through the nose, to kind of, again, send that compassion. And it's like you're filling up your bubble with this energy of compassion. And it's just like moving through the nervous system, through the mental faculties, through the physical body. And also through the emotional space, which also, often is found in the torso. But again, sometimes these emotional charges may be outside of the body or in other different regions. So we can just kind of take note of that. And so naturally, as things come to a very gentle rest, it's like you're sinking through the layers of like a Russian doll or an onion layer, and you can kind of feel those deeper layers of particular charges or sensations or areas of discomfort. And this is where more of that piercing and relentless focus and compassion can be guided, where we can pinpoint these particular charges wherever they may be. And it may not necessarily be a charge that's uncomfortable. It could be something that's more expansive and blossoming. And it's by way of us investigating that blossoming of that energy, that expansiveness, that actually begins to expand it even more. So we're treating everything essentially as the same or in the same way. It's felt very differently, things that feel more uncomfortable or things that are more joyful and feel like expansive. But by way of being curious and investigating it through that piercing lens, it's like our whole attention becomes like a laser pointer and we focus into these regions of our anatomy. This is where the blossoming, it's like you're unlocking these pockets within yourself. And for some, there may be a natural equanimity that kind of fosters here on even the most like deepest cellular level. And this is where the expansiveness of the attention can naturally blossom, because we feel contracted when the charges are locked and locking our attention. Particular charges that go unresolved, they lock our awareness to be more contracted. So we don't have an expanded connection to our anatomy, like the expanded aura that goes outside of the body, like 10, 20, 50 feet, let's say. Of course, it goes far beyond this, but just in the region of where we are. The expansive attention, you'll be able to feel more the sensations of all the things around you, being able to interact with reality more around you, because those locks, like particular charges in the anatomy, are kind of opened, they're released, so that attention, that awareness can also expand, and also your compassion. So the extensiveness of your compassion and your radiance will also fill up that bubble. And this is how we can move around and influence things in a positive and very gentle way. So that question of contemplation, which also can be explored through more written journaling type process, but bringing a self-honesty to what is truly needing to be looked at in your experience, in your present awareness, and in this present field of sensation, which we're doing right now. And this desire for truth is in alignment with the original intention that God Source has had in creating this time matrix. So for us to align with that original intention in which creation has been created, you can almost feel that frequency, a purity, and an original essence. And so this original essence in which has made this entire creation and this time matrix in particular, you yourself also have an original spark, an original essential creative spark. And that is your original encryption, or your original energy that goes far beyond just this incarnation in this body, but it is very much you that can be viscerally felt. So who am I at the core? What is my truest expression? What does this original encryption feel like? So we may naturally feel this in a particular region in the body, often around the heart region or above, but it may expand throughout the whole energy field, really. And so we can breathe into that, and that encryption that we connect to, whether it's clear for us or not, just the intention of that, you can breathe that through all the cells of your body. Because naturally, as you connect to that, it also will inevitably, whether now or in time, reveal to you the aspects of self in which are being engaged in or entertained, tolerated, certain behaviors or traits that are not so much in alignment with that original encryption. And this is where the desire for truth is of the highest intention, because we are looking for nothing other than what is true. And that will reveal all the aspects of our reality and our creation, our endeavors, our relationships, our behaviors that simply contrast that and do not hold to that same purity which we've connected to here. So we can rest within this for some time. Some of us may feel naturally at ease or at peace or complete here. It's not something that needs to be forced as we perceive into this question, but naturally, as we put a focused effort or a focused period where this can be uncovered, very quickly do we start to perceive particular things. And through our willingness, a sense of self-responsibility and honesty, we are very much and very quickly reveal the aspects of righteous behavior that can be very naturally aligned back into, a virtuous intention and way of being. But the relentlessness here is essentially not giving up uh, any time or energy or effort putting to waste anything, really, bringing all the energy into a focused lens on revealing these aspects in which are inhibiting this natural peace, this natural equanimity to be there more presently and more effortlessly. And so often this is where, at least in my own process, and this can be done right now if you're feeling it, or it can be done another time, as much as we can take mental note or engage each of them one by one for as long as we'd like to contemplate on them, just here with eyes closed or through this type of process. This also can be engaged through a written endeavor where we're writing these out, these qualities, these different, uh, distorted behaviors or things that are not lining up with true virtue. These can be written out. In detail as well, all the details, the thoughts you have about them. But we're writing or expressing, we're contemplating in a deeply honest way. So we're really willing to acknowledge the darkest aspects of what we're looking at. right? So often sometimes when we want to journal or we want to write like an affirmation, something, there's a constant desire for it to be positive, of a positive nature, or something that, we're affirming. But there's also great benefit in writing out things just exactly as they are, not sugarcoating it, not making it anything else and what we'd like it to be or what we think it is, but really being honest with exactly how it is manifesting, or how, some of the more darker, views that we may have about ourselves or about behavior. So wherever we're at with that, some of us may feel complete or would like to do that later, but we can bring that back for now. If there's comments or questions or anything that came up, anything that you were reflecting on, that can be done in the chat. But I do want to address this in like a real clear way, in the sense that, like I'll give you a very clear example actually, and exactly how I've done this process. Even in particular times where I'm experiencing maybe a deep, profound peace or samadhi state, or a state of expanded awareness, this is actually sometimes the best time to start acknowledging or going into refining or auditing behavior. And what I mean by this is, there'll be times where I would literally write out all of the qualities or behaviors within myself in which I felt like were not in alignment with truth, or what I view to be of purity or love or virtue, right? Using the Kahlonic virtues, using the Kahlonic attitudes of mastery, responsibility. But you can use other things, like in Buddhism has different breakdowns of this. Some Native Americans have really nice, where there's just an outline of what does ethical behavior look like, what does truthful behavior look like, or virtuous behavior, in all different forms, right? So I would engage this in a way where I would write out essentially the darkest aspects of my own being, my own behaviors, in the most blatant, truthful, what it is manner, not sugarcoating it, not writing it out like how I want it to be, or affirming it. That can be secondary, but exactly how it is. And this is done relentlessly, like in the sense, like we're doing this every couple of weeks, every couple of months, and we're doing it in a way so that every time you're doing it, you can look back at the previous times that you wrote it out, and you could see how are you matching up with those previous behaviors. How are you engaging these ways of being? Are they the same? Are they similar? Are they, more pronounced? And again, this is where you're looking at things that are more qualitative, right? Things that you can't really measure. Like you want to gain weight, you look at the scale. You want to lose weight, you look at the scale. You want to do this or that, you want to make more money, you want to, I don't know, spend more time meditating. Everything can be quantitatively described, but then there's a qualitative aspect to recognizing the dynamics within your reality, and seeing and writing out and engaging a clear awareness and an honest awareness as to what it is you're really noticing about how your reality is changing. Now, obviously, for all of us, we've been in this for a period of time, so we can clearly notice when things are changing in our life. But it can be very helpful to write that out so that you can go back, or what you are doing is actually you're setting yourself up for the future, because the reality is the cycles of behavior that may not be so fun to deal with are cycles. And so cycles that are happening now have happened in the past, and they will happen in the future. It's just that it'd be up to you on how pronounced those cycles are going to be, right? And how and whether or not you're able to essentially get ahead of time, like we went into last week, right? You're putting yourself into the reality of the present moment, so that when the inevitability of your being, your computer that this body is, will repeat that particular cycle because of the momentum of karma, you are able to be rested in the present space and aware and compassionate, so that you're not essentially making that cycle more difficult than it needs to be, right? You're essentially engaging it in a way where you see it coming, so you welcome it, right? You're welcoming it because you're aware of it and you've been honest with yourself about it, rather than trying to deny it essentially, or not acknowledge it. And that's why, essentially we get into the habits of repeating nature. So I hope this makes sense. I feel like most of us probably have done this before, but at least the way I've done it is, again, it's that kind of relentlessness and that very it's a very disciplined way of doing this, because again, it's like you're writing it all out, it's putting it all into paper, it's right in front of you, you can see it, you can engage it. I did mention that I was going to I want to do a workshop just on the virtues, because what I've done actually is I've gone through all the virtues and all the sub descriptions, like for let's look at Yume-Zun, enlightenment. You have patience, humility, eloquence, grace. Each of those four different little words have an energy to them, and there are reflections that you can do on each of those to kind of engage and see, how am I engaging this energy of humility, or being graceful or eloquent with my words, or patient in certain circumstances. Each of them can be focused on, and they can be focused on for quite a long time. But the engagement of this type of reflective process can be very helpful in conjunction with doing the mantras or the songs and the code work, and running those currents within your body, which they take on a life of their own, right? So these things will naturally reveal themselves. But the contemplative aspect can be very helpful, especially if you have a kind of a more active mind or a logical mind too. So yeah, so if there's any questions or comments on some of that, there was some clear reflections and journals and things that I would encourage to engage. And I don't want to give too many, because if you have too many journaling questions and things, then it gets too heady, and you start to write it like an essay on yourself, or something like that, which is fine, but keep it simple. But using this process of expanded awareness to acknowledge shadow aspects, or things that you feel are not so in alignment, and also the things that are in alignment. You want to acknowledge the things within your being that you feel you are acting with truth in, but truth is not on one side or the other. Truth takes the whole picture, and we're looking at the whole picture. It's like, this is where I stand now. This is who I am now. This is what's manifesting. And if we're honest about it, then we really have nothing ever to worry about, because it's all in the picture. We generally worry about things that are not in the picture, things that we're going to get blindsided by, right? Things that are unknown and we don't really understand yet. We can't see, it's like COVID. Everyone's afraid of COVID because they can't see it. Everyone's afraid of invisible things, it's like the boogeyman. What's the difference? But when you have knowledge, true knowledge is awareness. You can see. So you're not worried about, I used a straw and had a germ, and then the other person used the straw and they had a germ, and when I passed this deathly, it's just so many things about the invisible that we're afraid of. So why not just take a look at our own self and bring everything to the surface, leave nothing to being invisible, right? So then you're never really caught off guard, and then that's actually where self responsibility manifests, because step one is the honesty. Then you can take responsibility and be like, oh yeah, well, I see it now, so it's up to me, right? So yeah, that feels good for now. There's any other reflections, comments, feel free, but I think that's a nice added piece to the first two sessions we did. And then I will set up a date for the virtue one, because I've done a lot of work on those, and just different processes to engage them. Nothing really replaces the original workshops, the virtues workshops from the Kaolonic work, to encrypt those codes, but and do the induction of those codes and those songs. But aside from that, there's other reflective processes that we can use with those. Really nice, really nice. So I'll shut up for a moment. Just for a moment. I'm just going to see if I want to reflect on anything else. It's pretty good. Alrighty. Well, that feels good. I mean, it's pretty nice outside, obviously here in Canada, so it's time for some outdoor time. And yeah, if there's any further questions, or if you want to book some one-on-one time, feel free. Been engaging quite a few on different dynamics. A lot of it has been relationship based. I feel a lot of people are having all kinds of stuff happen in that regard. There's a lot of collective things healing with that right now in the collective space. You can see it with certain topics. We kind of alluded to it on last week's call. So, you know, these things are always kind of reflect in our own life as well in different ways. It's all a fractal. So, you know, it's just being aware of that. Um, and yeah, I mean, but, you know, solstice is coming. Solstice is always kind of a, not a light period, but it's like a lot of things come to light because that's the symbology of the solstice. You know, the light is here. So it very much will strengthen these practices that we're doing where the light can be shone, you know, on the realities of how you're engaging things. But yeah, that feels great. So I'm gonna link just in case everyone should be getting emails from me, but if you don't have access to the previous 2 session recordings, then I'll link it here with the donation link too. And yeah, and then I'll let you guys know on what the virtue one is going to come. I don't know if it'll be next Wednesday, but I'll let you guys know. So yeah, deep love to all of you. Enjoy your day, your night, whatever that may be, and peace out. See y'all.